This video is all about Sony's roadmap for cameras we're expecting here in 2022. I'm not going to talk about the Olympus OM1. I'm not going to talk about the Panasonic GH6. And I'm not going to talk about the recently announced super telephoto lenses by Canon last night of the 800 and 1200mm lenses. Well, with the exception of what I just mentioned there. I'm not going to talk about Nikon or anybody else. From here on out, we're going to be talking about Sony cameras due out here in 2022, as well as their specifications. According to Sony Alpha rumors this morning, we have an update on several cameras, although they don't touch on the entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera that's going to be dubbed either the A3, the A5, or even A6, and we might even have two entry-level such as an A3, and then the A5 and A6 just are a little bit higher than that. And to get an idea of what the specifications are going to be like for these cameras, just take a look to Canon's EOS RP. Now, they are expecting an update to that camera pretty soon, but in terms of price range, we can expect the entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera for Sony to be priced between, well, they could go as low as $799, but most likely between $899 and $999. And in terms of specifications, well, take a look at the Canon EOS RP, and that will give you a rough idea. But there's no update in terms of timeline from Sony Alpha rumors this morning. What they talk about is the A9 III. And I was really surprised that we were going to see this camera continue because we now have the Sony Alpha 1, which didn't exist when the A9 came out. So it kind of tops where the A9 is going to be able to grow. However, that camera is supposed to come out in the second half, and it's supposed to be somewhere in the last quarter. But the A7R5, the much anticipated A7R5, is supposed to come out before that, along with a ZV-1 styled camera. And that's it for the update to the roadmap. So the ZV-1 style camera and the A7R5 are supposed to be coming out anytime between March and most likely May. A summer launch is very unlikely, although Sony has made an exception in the past with the A7R III, which came out in the end of August. So what about specifications? Well, let's first of all take a look at the A7R5, the successor to the A7R4 with a 61 megapixel camera. Canon at this point doesn't even have an answer to this. Now, the A7R5 is supposed to have a 100 megapixel sensor. Now, it could be 102, but it's supposed to be right around that 100 megapixel sensor size. Full frame, BSI stacked, and capable of 10 frames per second, which is still quite impressive. That moves an awful lot of data around. It's still supposed to have dual CFexpress card slots, but type A and not B. And in terms of, well, the quality, 14-bit RAW. So a pretty good solid camera. And this makes perfect sense in Sony's lineup. I almost said Canon for a minute there. I haven't had much sleep, so I might drop a few mistakes, and who knows, in post I might be fixing them, because as far as my head goes, I'm saying most things correctly. Anyhow, let's get off that little bit of a rant, and let's take a look at the A9 III. The A9 III has a lot of updates. It has a 24 megapixel sensor, which isn't that impressive. That 24 megapixel sensor is most likely going to be a BSI stacked as well. It's capable of 30 frames per second burst shooting, and that's probably the reason for the limitation of the sensor size. It doesn't want to compete against the Alpha 1, although I would have loved to have had at least 26 megapixels. Other features include, it's going to have the Alpha 1 autofocus system. It's going to be capable of 6K up to 60 frames per second with 12-bit RAW video, which is really good. There is going to be no 8K, although it is going to do 6K oversampled 4K, and while it can do 4K 120 frames per second, it's going to do it in Super 35, so this further helps separate this camera from the Alpha 1, and what I'm starting to see more now with Sony as their lineup is getting a little bit more crowded, we're starting to see them borrow that Canon cripple hammer and rebrand it the Sony cripple hammer. And we're starting to see, for example, 4K 120, this camera definitely has it, at least according to the rumored specs, but it's handicapped. It's not full frame, it's Super 35, and it's going to be binned or something else. And we're not going to have 8K, so they're separating the cameras slightly. Now, the A5 and the A6 or the A3, I don't know if there's going to be two cameras or just one, but it's really the only hole in Sony's lineup. Canon kind of shocked the market when they came up with the RP and priced it right around $999, making it the cheapest entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera out there. And stills-wise, it's a very solid camera. Video-wise, well, I certainly wouldn't buy it. But if you're a photographer, it's definitely a great entry level. I'm curious to see what kind of tack that Sony takes with this camera. What kind of 4K they're going to give it. Are they going to give it 4K, 24, 25, and 30, but make it cropped like 1.6 times with Canon? Are they going to give it a soft 4K? What about overheating? What about record limits? I think Sony's really done with that 30-minute record limit, but we might very well have overheat limits that kick in right around 30 to 60 minutes, depending on the ambient temperature. But it looks to be an exciting year for everybody concerned. We've already got Micro Four Thirds covered with the OM1 and the GH6. And I know I said I wasn't going to discuss it, and I'm not. I'm just going to cursory look at the market and what we can see in terms of updates. Canon, we got a couple of lenses. We're going to get more lenses. We're going to get more camera bodies. Sony, we're getting more lenses and camera bodies. Nikon, well, they had a great last year with the Nikon Z9, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Z8 this year. So it's, despite everything being in super slow-mo this year, yes, and it feels like the year is operating at 240 frames per second without a lot of detail, but it looks like we do have many, many announcements coming. So fingers crossed that things don't get pushed into 2023, and we'll see what this year has to offer. Now, one last thing before I let you go. I am doing a giveaway this month. I'm going to keep it really quick. I'm giving away one of two Angelbird CFexpress cards, their AV Pro SE and the AV Pro SX. One is 512 gigabytes with 800 megabyte per second minimum sustained write speed, and the other is a 160 gig card with a staggering 1,480 megabytes per second sustained write speed. All you have to do to have a chance to win these is simply subscribe to this channel, be 18 years of age, have a mailing address somewhere on the planet, and I'll be announcing the winner in the first couple of days of March, because I've got to go through an awful lot of data. YouTube doesn't make it easy to find all my subscribers, so it usually takes a while to compile. Then I use a Perl script to sort, and then I use a random number generator to find the winner. So probably I'll do this in a live stream on the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd of March. We'll just have to see yet. But yeah, I'm really excited about this giveaway. I love giving away products. It's an awful lot of fun. Leet won the last Angelbird CFexpress card. I'll be giving away one next month and the month after until I've gotten rid of all these products. There's also another benefit to subscribing. There's so much information coming out right now. If you subscribe and choose all notifications, as soon as I publish a video, you're going to be notified. And then once the camera season's over, if you're tired of all these updates, just uncheck all notifications, and then you won't get bothered nearly as much. But thank you so much for subscribing, watching, commenting, and participating. That's it for now. We'll see you again soon.